Development Agreement. Les McDonald, please. I guess we approved the minutes too fast.
Question in my ear back there. I was trying to listen to both. Theory. There we go. All right. This is an item that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, just as an initial briefing of something that we thought was coming your way and was coming together. It is closer now to fruition, but not quite there yet. But thought we'd bring you this next step, which would be the development agreement, or actually an enhanced development agreement, associated with the property at 525 South Jackson Street, which is the site of the new Jimmy John's that's currently under construction. And when we talked about this before, I took you through kind of a quick overview of the location, so I'll show you a little bit of that just to refresh everybody's memory. This is a site located on the northwest corner of Jackson Street and 6th, so what's shown here in the red is the Jimmy John's. The area we're talking about for frontage improvements would be along this east edge of that site, which is the western edge of Jackson Street, with just a little bit right here on the 6th Street side, as I'll explain in just a moment. Just a couple of Google Earth shots showing what that streetscape looks like today. Again, the site is here, and they're going to be building their building essentially right up to the point where this little rail fence was located. It's now gone. And we have talked with them about the concept of doing a frontage improvement similar to that being done in front of the EMSI site. Came through here in the last couple of months. So as part of that, we have been working with the landowner, the developer, working with Hodge and Associates on a design, and having discussions with ITD about the concept that is being proposed. What is before you today is really a development agreement similar to the one for the EMSI property that spells out what the role would be of the city and what the role would be of the developer with respect to making improvements. The concept in terms of the improvements themselves, this is a little bit different version of the site drawing, if you will, that you saw previously. Essentially what we're looking at here is the existing curb line shown in the lighter gray. Kind of comes right on down through there and on down to the corner. Similar to the EMSI site, the proposal is to take that curb out and then reconstruct it further out closer to the westerly southbound lane on Jackson Street. And by doing that, we would displace the parking that is in that area. There would still be parking on here to the north at this point, and would end up with a wider sidewalk section, which would then allow room for new street trees that would be further removed from the building face, which will be right along that property line. Also, the installation of some of the vintage style street lights like we have in College that are also going to be in front of the MSI property further north of this site. The one addition on 6th Street that I mentioned would be right here. There is an existing Cobra Head luminaire at that point. We're going to be that close with the curb ramps and all that on the corner. Thought it was appropriate to go ahead and replace that one with the vintage light at the same time. So that would get that far around the corner, if you will, with those types of improvements.
Before you leave that
Yes.
photo, Les, does the new curb line sit right on the existing right turn lane striping? Do you know?
The curb line, I believe, sits back a little bit westerly of that line. When you put a curb up against a travel lane like that, you usually have to add a couple of feet extra width for shy distance off the curb. And so I believe, and the design is not done on this, but I believe what we'll see coming out of it is that curb line will be set back probably about 2 feet from what would be the kind of that dividing stripe, if you will, between the southbound lane and the right turn lane that's there. Now it would be a similar layout to what we saw further north.
Okay.
Okay.
So, but there'll be no change in the through lanes. The traffic lanes will stay where they are.
The through traffic lanes would stay as they are.
Okay.
The right turn pocket that is there today, which is located generally right in this area, it starts right about this north property line. That's the last parking stall. And we have a lane that goes from that point down to the corner. It's a fairly narrow turn lane. I would consider it to be substandard in width. The length of the turn lane is probably also substandard based on highway standards. But it is there, and it is used. Based on some traffic count information we have from the multimodal transportation plan effort, we see approximately 10% of the traffic on Jackson Street southbound during that peak hour using that turn lane. So roughly 70, 75 turns out of about 780 or so vehicles passing through there in an hour are using a right turn at that location. So roughly 10%. One of the questions that was raised has been, well, if that right turn lane goes away, does that create problems? Because some people do use it, obviously around 10%. If it was not there, which would be the case with this change, then the westerly of the three southbound lanes would become a combined lane, so through to the south and also a right turn heading on to 6th Street West. With the number at 10% in the overall and 3 lanes available heading southbound, that doesn't strike me as being particularly problematic. We're still assessing that, and we'll be with ITD as they take a look at this concept. They're aware of what the concept is that is proposed. The preliminary construction drawings for this that can go to ITD for review are anticipated to come in either yet today or tomorrow. And so those will be transferred down to ITD for their review and consideration. They have to approve this. It's something that goes through their permitting process. They've expressed interest in the past about continuing that EMSI type improvement all the way through the corridor between 3rd and 6th, but they've also expressed some concern about the potential loss of that right turn lane. So we'll see what their response is when we get plans down to them, because that's what they need to really give us a true answer.
So say they deny it, then what's our course of action?
If they deny it, it is their highway. And really the course of action at that point is to say, okay, either we just back away from it and say it's not feasible here because of that turn lane, or as an alternative we look at, all right, if we modify that turn lane in some fashion, maybe it's shortened a bit but still exists near the south end, near the intersection, but we create the bump out up here somewhere with the intent that maybe someday it continues on to the north. That's a possibility. It becomes a question of, as you shorten that, what I think is already a probably short turn lane, that much further, what's the effectiveness? And does it just become kind of a de facto swerve through it on your way to the right-hand turn just because it's too short? And that can happen, so we have to avoid that.
People don't really line up in it like a right turn lane as a rule. They tend to, like you say, swerve into it.
Yeah, they kind of veer through it. And
Les, a moment ago, you mentioned losing parking spaces. Are we really going to lose any?
And actually, in this case, no, we would not, because that last stall ends right there at about that property line. After that, to the south, is the right turn lane. So in this case, we would not lose any parking. If we were to extend any further north in the future, then yes, we would.
So following up on Dan's comment, if they deny it, ITD denies it, what's the fate of the street trees that have now been removed? Is there a way to put them back in, or does it just turn into sidewalk desert?
Right, that's something we would certainly have to assess with our Parks Department and our city arborist. Part of the concern here is how close to the building would those trees be located, for the potential for root conflict or branches, getting out into the building face itself. With the right tree selection, more of a columnar style rather than the rounded style that we have today, the branch issue is less of a factor. So there may be a way that they could be replaced essentially with what's out there without creating a conflict of the building. So that's a possibility. The challenge there, though, is that sidewalk is narrow enough. If we put a tree back in there, how much sidewalk space is left between the tree or the tree well and the edge of the property, the right-of-way? Is it enough to be accessible and meet the standards there? it's pretty tight in there, so I don't know yet if that would truly be an option.
As Art mentioned, those 2 trees that were there have come out, and I believe that was not because of this proposal, although this would have required it if sequence of events had been such, but that building up to the property line per code and as permitted, they got into the roots of those trees as well as would have gotten with the building up into the crown of it as well. So they pretty much had to come out of there regardless.
There was a plan to replace them no matter what.
Well, I don't know that there was initially, but I mean, the subject did come up, and in the end, obviously, it became an issue as they delved further into the project. It's a case, frankly, of a tree, probably the wrong tree in the amount of space that we have available. Because, again, it's a narrow sidewalk. There's not much room between the curb and the property line, and yet we've got pretty substantial trees. It's, that kind of thing is bound to happen as you have redevelopment next to mature trees of that type. So, similar to the discussion we had on the MSI parcel, there has been work done to look at how the city and the developer and the property owner could team on this project to make this type of improvement happen. Again, this was not an improvement that is required by the development of the property. They were not required to make any fringe improvements because it was already in place. Right? Maybe not what we would like to have seen, but it was there. And so Jimmy Johns and the developer took on the concept of replacing the existing walks that were out there because they wanted to see a more finished, clean product done, and some of the walks that were there were not in particularly good condition. And so they kind of started down that path, and then we came into the discussion about, well, should we consider expanding this similar to what we've done elsewhere on the corridor? But along with that becomes, okay, how do you deal with the cost? So we have put together a package with them similar to what we've done in the past, where we'd have a combination of costs, and it's detailed by line item or construction line item in your packet, that smaller text. But this is a summary here on the screen that essentially indicates where funding would come from for what's roughly a $73,000 overall project. Sidewalk program, again, granting about $8,800. Similar to what we've done elsewhere in downtown, where it's a 30% of overall sidewalk cost type of participation in the downtown core. The pavement management program would participate to about $9,700. This really has to do with some of the street rework and the curbs and storm drainage aspects. Street light program for what would now be 3 new lights, actually replacements of 2, I believe, in that location. Street division labor, would be our crew time to actually go in and do the demo on the existing curb and some remaining sidewalk, particularly around the corner that's there. The arts program for tree grates, artistic tree grates again. And then the developer funding at just under $40,000. This is a number that we've worked on with them. They are comfortable with it, as I understand it. It is a cost that potentially is eligible under the URA Public Infrastructure Reimbursement Program, and I believe there's interest to that. Gary can probably touch on that if desired. And so it's, that's generally the breakdown that's proposed and how we would suggest this would move forward, assuming we get the approvals from ITD and the council and continue on down this path.
Is the sidewalk program 8885 coming out of 2014 or 2015?
Well, at the moment it would be out of the 2014 program, and we've kind of set aside or identified.
My reason for asking is that I feel like we're really utilizing that program and those funds, and we used them up at EMSI, we're using them here, we're really pulling them down.
Yeah, between the 2 jobs, I think we're in the neighborhood of about $15,000, and we have identified that, yes, there's enough funding left in 14 to cover this. It may be that actually doesn't get paid out until the 15 fiscal year, but that money rolls in the capital program, so that's just fine.
As long as Mr. Palmer understands that's how he's doing it.
Well, that one resides in capital, so it'll stay. The 15 funding, of course, is substantially lower in the sidewalk program than what we have this year in 14. So that's why we've identified it with some of the remaining money in the 14 program.
Okay. Yes, sir.
On your Exhibit B, the term sheet, you've got a couple columns over the right-hand side where you have the developer funding and Jimmy John's funding, and Jimmy John's is a big blank column. Is there anything contemplated from there?
Well, it's really one and the same, and originally it started out as sidewalk funding and then just, Jimmy John's funding. What's not there, if you look at line item number 3, which is remove and dispose of concrete sidewalk, you'll see there's no price attached to that. That was previously a dollar amount there, and it showed up then in that sidewalk funding, and that was the removal of the existing walk that they've already done. So just really to simplify this a little bit, that dollar amount was taken out. It's already a cost they've borne, and so there really was no reason to show it again.
Well, I'm in favor of it. I mean, I'm in favor of the improvements all the way up and down the street there. That's, kind of been the thing since we started this is, and it sounds like ITD is leaning that direction too. I mean, we don't know, but this should move forward as far as historical discussions with them. So, I'm in favor of moving it forward.
Makes sense to me, too, especially with the widening of the sidewalk, not taking up anything more than a semi-useless right turn lane, and providing the ability to replant trees there more appropriately, and providing a better streetscape for pedestrians, and improving that whole west side of Jackson. It's a good thing to be doing, in my opinion.
Okay, let's move it on consent, Gary, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Les. Bill